Friday Forum Town Halls. So for your information, this session is being recorded to allow the Office of Equity and Inclusion to capture your questions and concerns and actually use this information to inform our work and continue to implement the roadmap's goals and objectives. We encourage you to ask your questions through the chat box, which is being monitored. During these interactive sessions, our goal is that you will be able to learn more about the college's equity and inclusion roadmap for success. MC is committed to being an equity-minded institution. We are seeking to not only aim high, but also to amplifying, integrating, and measuring our work. By working together as a college community, we will continue to pursue equitable student outcomes, inclusive excellence in teaching and learning, and fair and inclusive employee experiences. We will raise our institution to a level of civility of which we can all be proud of. So last Friday, we had the pleasure of having our co-chairs for goal number 1 lead us in a thought-provoking and a very interactive session on how the college community can assist with the implementation of helping to improve persistence, retention, completion, graduation, transfer of all students, particularly our African-American male and Latinx students. If you missed that insightful presentation, you can find the recording on the Office of Equity and Inclusion's website. As we prepare to implement our 5 equity and inclusion goals for this academic year, based on the objectives researched by members of PACEI that were of the 2017-2019 work group, we look forward to an interactive discussion where you provide us with your feedback for these other additional goals. Today, we have our awesome co-chairs, Professor Karen Pende-Martinez, Latoria Strickland, and Ms. Talendra Ryan, who will be leading us in our discussion today. These co-chairs and their subcommittee members will be assisting the college in overseeing the implementation progress of goal number 2 and some of the objectives associated with it. Group 2, the space is yours.
All right, well, thank you, Rachel. Karen, are you gonna share the PowerPoint on the screen?
Sorry, getting it
It's
up.
all good. It's all good.
You have a beautiful view in the background, Tilandra.
Thank you very much. It is very beautiful out here.
It's the day to be out.
Okay, so as Dr. Part has mentioned, we are the co-chairs of Goal 2. And you know, she already introduced myself, Tori, and Karen as the co-chairs, and I would also like to introduce our committee members, Shakina Adams Gormley, Shayla Atkins, Kimberly Block-Rakan, Andrea Foster, Eduardo Fuentes, James Murray, Elizabeth Schlackman, Sean Wei Jing, our SVP liaison, James Gillis, and our resource persons, Krista Leach Walker and Lauren Landau. So during today's town hall, we will be giving you all an overview of our goal, including some of the primary objectives for the year that we plan to work on, some of the activities that are currently underway in support of our goal. And following our overview, we will break out into our breakout sessions for about 30 minutes to discuss how we all play a part in facilitating the roadmap to success by answering the 5 questions. And then we will close out with a discussion, with the report out of which you all discussed in our breakout rooms. So please feel free to, any questions that you all do have, continue to place those in the chat along the way. And so we'll go to the, next slide. So for those of you who don't know, Goal 2 sets out to improve employee recruitment, hiring, onboarding, development, and training procedures and practices to attract and retain a diverse workforce that includes leaders, managers, faculty, and staff, reflective of the college's diverse student population. And now I will turn the floor over to Karen, who will share some demographic information. So all yours, Karen.
Thank you so much, Tilandra. So I wanted to just start with a little bit of an overview of where we are as a college. Our student demographics shown here give you a pretty good idea that African-American and Hispanic students are each a little bit over a quarter of our population, White students are somewhat less than a quarter. And then Asian, and I'm sorry, I don't know if we're seeing this is the blue is the foreign or unknown category, comprise about another quarter. But in terms of our full-time faculty, we are substantially less diverse. And we know that having faculty that students recognize themselves in front of their classroom, that's a powerful student success factor. But indeed, our full-time faculty are still about 61% white, Black or African-American, about 21% of our faculty. Hispanic is about 5.9%. I don't have a separate breakout for part-time faculty, but it has been pretty much parallel historically. And we also have just a quick overview of our staff and administrator populations. And by the way, we will be sharing this PowerPoint at the end, so you will have this data to look back at. But so our staff and administrator populations are a bit more diverse, but overall, college-wide, we, our full-time employees and part-time faculty come out to being majority white. And let me turn it over to Tori to talk about our objectives coming forward.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic afternoon. So I'm just going to go over the objectives and priorities. So objective 4.1, essentially to train those who are directly involved in the hiring process on the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion in all phases of the hiring and ultimately employment process. Also to ensure that we're holding ourselves accountable to really reach out and engage diverse applicants, interviewees, and to recommend candidates that they're ultimately going to benefit the college, and be willing to engage, to restart searches that fail to attract a diverse pool of candidates. For 4.2, train and appoint equity-focused search advocates who are going to work with search committees to help write position descriptions, job qualifications, questions that are more inclusive, also to help to raise awareness around unconscious bias, and to promote the hiring of culturally competent employees. Slide, please. Objective 1.1, to increase the number of African American male and Latinx students who graduate, transfer, and complete. Also to ensure that we have faculty members, both full and part-time, who directly reflect that population. And then we have goal 4.4, to revise and utilize the minority faculty internship policy and to engage graduate students from traditionally represented groups. Thank you. And then we have goal 4.3, to train, fund, and appoint current employees to serve as diversity recruitment ambassadors, excuse me, to promote MC as a destination employer to underrepresented groups in the community, graduate school, professional associations, conferences, and other recruitment resources. Slide, please. And so in terms of just looking at those objectives and some of the activities that are underway, the search advocate training, we've provided training to 48 MC employees, which is phenomenal, trained both in June and August of 2020. And we plan to deploy those 48 MC employees in searches that are going to be coming up in 2020 and 2021. Minority faculty internship updates, we've mapped out the process using the project timeline just to identify what needs to be done when and resources. We've done some internal and external interviews, which are ongoing to get additional research. And we have a white paper that's currently drafted but being edited. Slide, please. So, Talandra, take it away.
Back to me already. This is going faster than I thought. Okay, so We are now going to send you all into your breakout session. So right here, you all can capture the questions here. We're also going to put them in the chat for you all when you break out into your rooms. And so we want you to go through these 5 questions and keeping in mind goal 2 when you're answering these questions. And we hope that you all have fruitful discussions in your breakout sessions. So, but we can start with group 1. I don't know who the facilitator was for that group, but the floor is open for group 1. And yeah.
I think it was my group. I think I was in group 1.
All right.
Okay.
The number 1 group.
Yes.
Number 1 and number 2.
Isn't that ironic? Didn't mean to sow dissension, by the way, by saying that we were the best. It's a tier, not a role. So my group had a wide-ranging discussion with some very sort of specific answers, looking at a lot of things. We acknowledge that some departments might be diverse on paper, but when you look at the distribution of groups by role, some roles are very not diverse. So I'm in the library, the librarians are not very diverse, but the library employees as a whole are more diverse. Then the question of what candidates are applying and you know, how that question of diverse candidate pools, is there a diversity of candidates out there in the sort of metaphorical huge applicant pool that might exist. We also talked about disability and acknowledging disability as a barrier to inclusive hiring, that we may not be aware of how our application process might disengage or disincentivize, lots of other disses that I can't think of the right word, but the people who might have disabilities, for example, like how accessible the application process is. I just said that. We also talked about age and how Montgomery College tends to be an older employee population, and that maybe there might be some idea that when we're hiring people, we want to hire people with an age, and that could be sort of a hidden bias or a bias that we're not acknowledging, and that there are generational differences, that we've had some great speakers in the college talking about how different generational groups, in very broad strokes, approach working life and how that might disincentivize different generations depending on the attitudes of the hiring committee. We talked about what a great idea the search advocates are, and hopefully that will help matters in the college, but also that there's some really interesting information in the search committee training, and that perhaps that could be sort of brought out or rolled out to more employees, not just people who are on search committees. Then we had an interesting conversation about training, and about how there in the past there was training that was very much geared towards people in specific roles, and that people found that quite effective, and that perhaps that's one way to address specific issues, specific problems or issues in there. And then we ended talking about what role managers and supervisors have in ensuring these changes in both our practices but also our attitudes, and how it's really important that any changes come in a very amicable way, that we respect and support our employees in making sometimes really big mental shifts about the way that we think about things. But we also need to be sure that the college as a whole is supporting the managers in the training and the expectations. Thank you very much. That's everything I have to say.
Awesome. Group 2.
I think that's actually our group. Is that right? I didn't notice what number we were in.
Yes. Yeah, we're group 2, Karen. And you're muted.
Is Shayla gonna report?
Okay, yeah, I can do it. I wasn't sure which of us was going to. Okay. So we are group 2, which sorry, I'm trying to pull it back up now. So for us, one of the things, let's see, we are also a mixture of representation from throughout the college, across the college. So some of the things that we talked about in terms of like the question 1, how does the goal relate to our various areas, was looking at in terms of like hiring part-time faculty, and then taking into consideration ensuring that there's equitable representation across with the diversity in terms of the faculty, the part-time faculty who get to who are hired. As a search advocate, some of the things would be like reconsidering some of the job applicant questions, so that and consideration particularly of things like the various languages expected of those who are applying for a position at Montgomery College. So for example, how the languages that are generally requested are European languages, so Spanish and French, but what about languages like Amharic and languages that provide a broader representation of what students speak. Also looking at and considering that there is a significant number of students in certain majors and disciplines who come from particular backgrounds. So, and then providing representation in the faculty in those specific discipline areas, but then also not just focusing on racial diversity, but all various identity and identity forms and affinity groups. So what about disability, LGBTQ faculty and staff and things like that. And then we talked about, and I'm just going to start jumping around so that I don't take up too much more time. So some of the challenges we anticipated was what maybe only focusing on like the actual interviewing experience and not necessarily the materials that are provided and other factors when it comes to people who are interviewing as a potential challenge. The preparation for faculty, for applicants who may not have an awareness of the MC campus culture, faculty culture, and the various individual campus cultures that may exist when the interviewing process, and how those things come to inform those on the search committee in terms of what they're looking for. And so some ways to help make people accountable then would have been things like ensuring that training and is done for especially the chair of the committee, but also the search advocate and the various people on the committee, and ensuring that the chair is empowered and has the tools to ensure that what is supposed to take place during the hiring and search process actually does take place. All right, that wraps it up. You're on mute again, Talandra.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure that all my background noise doesn't filter in. So we have about 15 minutes left, and I don't want to take away from everybody else who has to share. So can we just have like a few highlights just to make sure that we get through all of our groups in a timely manner, because I do want to respect everybody's time and make sure that we do end at 1:30. So I'll turn it back over to group 3.
That's Maurice. Where's?
Ah, of course. I was wondering. Sorry. Okay. Well, we focused on the 4th question and concerning recruitment and we wanted to make sure we start, as someone else spoke up before, we want to start with a focus on the hiring managers and specific strategies that we would like to see in addition to what's already in place. We also focused on helping prospective employees to be more acclimated to the process, especially with regard to being paper screened or eliminated later in the process. One of our observations was that there might be the case where if we're dealing with a minority applicant, that they're right out of graduate school and they are not as aware of the amount of times that you need to apply for a job, and they get discouraged too quickly, as opposed to how some other people have been trained. I guess what I'm getting at is that if you're part of the majority population of people in America, you probably are raised with a certain mindset toward applying for and getting a job. And I'm implying that that mindset might not be prevalent in somebody who has a family from another country or from another race. They may not have the idea that you have to just keep trying. You know, they might get discouraged too quickly, which may result in a very low applicant pool in the future. In order to combat this, we thought that maybe we would make it clear to everyone who applies that there is the possibility of a meeting to discuss why you were not hired in the same context as adjunct faculty currently have in their union contracts. But we also said that it would not be something that we want to require anybody to do, because it'd be just too many people. We could just put it out there in the initial documentation that if they want to have a discussion, that we're happy to do it in the context of encouraging them to apply later, not to file a grievance and sue us. So that was also a concern, that we want to make sure that everything we do is in context of being caring to the people that are applying, to encourage them to apply over and over again until they are qualified. Also, rather than focusing on getting a good routine for interviewing, we were talking briefly on making sure that we can recruit competent people, because again, you might have some people that come in and they look competent, they act competent, but then when they get the job, they might not be so competent. So in order to deal with that, we talked about maybe having some kind of recruitment strategy where we could offer an internship to them. And we talked about how maybe it would be the kind of thing where full-time temporary, get them involved in that kind of internship where they're paid so they don't have to worry about paying their rent. Maybe have a mentor program to help them apply for the jobs over and over again until they get the job that they need at the institution that they need. Additional training for hiring managers, of course, and having other departments receptive to change. We said that sometimes we might have an idea and we might reach out to another department to get a partnership going, and that sometimes the receiving department will just say, well, thank you, we've already got that covered, and then the idea just kind of dies on the vine. So we'd like to see some change in that regard, if possible. And that's it.
All right, thanks, Maurice. Who do we have from Group 4?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kimberly Blakarinkan. I'm a member of this committee. So I'm going to share out for number 4, just some of the bigger highlights. So we had some conversations about when we're looking at candidates, the question of what's knowledge base that I can teach a candidate versus something that they already are bringing and providing an opportunity. And so community engagement gave that question, Carla put that on the table of when looking at a candidate, there were maybe some candidates who had not had higher ed experience, but she, you know, in looking at that said, well, this is something I can teach somebody about higher ed, but I can't teach somebody, are they passionate about serving the community? So when looking at our job descriptions and what we're putting out there, incorporating that into the description that we're writing, that we're kind of opening it up to more people and not having a job description that's so kind of rigid and automatically screens people out if there's room for training them or other opportunities as well. So that was put on the table of going back and looking at our job descriptions and making sure we're putting what our candidates actually need to hire them. We also had a conversation about, I've heard this before in the other groups, but about our candidates that are recent graduates from school. So again, that conversation about, are we willing to train them? And we talked about some ways that we're using our own students in our different programs and departments so that the students are the face of whatever they're entering. For example, at the libraries, having students be the front face that students are interacting with first to help with that welcoming environment and seeing other people in front of them. I did get a note. I'm sorry about my audio. I've heard from IT that I'm in the next batch to get a laptop. So I'm sorry about that. Let's see, what else did we talk about? We also talked about having welcoming environment for our candidates when they come. So we had some members talk about their experiences coming in and being concerned about their accent or how will they be perceived in the interview. So how can we have our interviews set up in a way that they're welcoming? And the other thing that we talked about, there were two more things. One, we started a conversation about the staff pushback and wanting to identify what exactly is the pushback. So once we can get that on the table, then we can have a conversation about how to address that. And the last thing is we had some agreement among our group about the faculty internship program, that there was interest and excitement about that, and hoping, you know, that it's something that can come to fruition. That's the report from group 4.
Okay, so we have 9 minutes left, and I do want to make sure that we get to the 4 remaining groups. So I'm sorry to cut everybody off, but for the 4 remaining groups, I want to say, can we just highlight maybe the three most important aspects that you all talked about, or, you know, cut it down to maybe about 1 to 2 minutes, because I do want to make sure that we are being respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to turn it back over to the next group to do their report out.
Okay, hi, we are group 5. We've focused on the staff workers and the lack of English training. The solutions we came up were problematic. Translation isn't solving the problem, it's treating the symptom. Especially the faculty worker, the staff work, the facility workers who aren't getting communications to participate more fully in the experience of working at Montgomery College. They themselves have 2 to 3 jobs and have families that they need to be tending to, and here they're being told, you know, being offered these programs to go to work on English or whatever, and they can't make them. The schedules, the demands of the scheduling are conflicting with their lives. We agreed that language training would be offered as a benefit, that could be a benefit to the staff, which brings working here to a new level. The wellness programs advocate 1.5 hours a week for staff. And I don't know if that was just particular to COVID, but why not have a TESOL bilingual faculty trainer have an ongoing program that half-an hour intervals, maybe 3 times a week, come in and do some training on the job with the staff to address their concerns and bring them up to date on communications that involve them, and especially to help them with their performance evaluations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I really don't mean to cut everybody short, but Karen did post in the chat that any information that you all were not able to report out, please include in your evaluation or in the chat feature, just so that we're able to capture all of the discussion points. So group 6.
I don't know what happened to mine. Ernestine?
Yeah, so quickly, I'll do that in 60 seconds. 1, group 6. We thought that we should pay attention to where positions are advertised, use the county resources, the advisory groups, the boardrooms, the county and state to attract diverse population. Pay attention to the search committee makeup, so that that also is representative of the intention of the institution to be diverse. And what we call an integrity of will, that you might find that we go through all of this process, but the persons who are responsible for making final decisions are not really on board and are not supporting all of the work that's being done at the grassroots, at the ground level. Open questions as to how decisions are made. For example, there should be written justification of the procedures, so that at the end of everything, everyone is aware that everything has been done according to the criteria matrix, so nobody feels that they have no reason to trust the transparency of the process. The need for a comprehensive or clear training program, so that every area of the institution, employees know what it is expected of them, especially when they are being oriented into the workspace. Staff training unit, and the value of the individual development plan, so that there are understandable goals for the individual within the context of diversity. And a general roadmap for initial training, so that folks are not lost in the process. I think I did that very quickly. I can put the rest of the information in the chat box for you.
Thank you. Do we have someone from group 7?
Okay, so I guess I will be quick and brief for group 7. So without repeating maybe overlapping points from previous groups, I think there are basically 3 things that we talked about standing out. One is that we have the group members coming from HR and coming from the workforce development, not workforce development, from the AD training. So we feel that we are ready in many ways in terms of training and hiring. We have rules, regulations, we have certain things already in place. But there is the issue is that sometimes, when we have the, we have a certain position, advertised, and then afterwards the applicants, the pool itself, it just does not, not as we expected to be able to, find the applicants, to be interviewed or to be hired eventually, to be, more diversified. And it's talking about the reality, the pool of the applicants. Yeah, that's an issue. Applicant, the pool not diversified enough when people do apply. And we also talk about the one big challenge would be that with the current, uncertainty of the economic situation, it's just about that budget concerns. Because, if you don't have the money to do things, you basically, you do not have the resources as we continue to move on. So this is certainly one challenge. And another thing is that talking about the strategies, we actually feel that, it will be a good idea is instead of just looking at the, hiring process or training, we also try to, think of that our role is an educational institution. So that, in our everyday training and educating of our students, including our, student employees, this is actually also an important step for us to, train our students. See, if we don't have enough Latino applicants, we start from our own institution itself by educating our students, by hiring more student employees, by training them to be ready after they graduate. And we already have some, good things going on in certain departments, so that we actually start to establish actually right from here, from our students, a pipeline to provide the, qualified applicants and human resources. And I think one thing is also that hopefully when we talk about the, to be more diversifying in our hiring process and composition our college employees, kind of hoping if we have are we going to have very clear metrics? I mean, some kind of numbers we are going to, to use, things like that. Yeah, I'm going to stop here.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll let Tori close it out with group 8.
Hey folks, so let's talk about, everybody sees it as critical to their role. So in a nutshell, some of the challenges that we saw is some of the cultural barriers here at the college. It was mentioned earlier, age being one of them. The recruitment process being a barrier or a challenge. And then I'll leave it there. In terms of strategies, revamping recruitment, building out a mentorship program, being customer, community, and employee focused. Let's see, creating a toolbox and other tools for folks to use in order to support. How do we hold folks accountable? Focus on onboarding, look at the performance review process, have some requirements around folks participating in student groups. I will email the additional information. So group 8, you will be represented. I will email the additional information to Karen so that we have it. And that's it for me in group 8.
Okay, so I'll just step in here and say that we thank you. We do hope you will please click the link that is in the chat to fill out the evaluation form to give us your individual feedback. I got a list up here of upcoming equity and inclusion events and town halls. We will be sending you this PowerPoint so that you will be able to give us your responses and also know where you can come to find out more. And we leave you with a thought about inclusion as a mindset. And I'm going to just turn it back over to Rachel if you would like to say a little adieu.
I think you did it all, Karen. I appreciate you. Thank you for everyone who was able to attend. The feedback was tremendous. I just want to make sure that you know the goal 3, we're fostering college culture of equity, inclusion, civility, accessibility, kindness, trust, and respect for human dignity through targeted programs, activities, and educational opportunities. Please join us next Friday. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
By the way, before you leave, everybody, you can copy the chat. If you know how to do that, you just go down to the 2, go over to the 3 dots, click on there, copy chat, save it to a folder because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Thank you, Caroline. And
also the evaluations. Thank you all so much. And I just want to thank the co-facilitators for this session. I appreciate your work and I appreciate your dedication to making sure that that we share with the college community the roadmap. And Dr. Bonaparte, thank you for your leadership as well.
We appreciate you, Ms. Bland. We appreciate you. If you did not get to send all your feedback, please make sure that you're sending it to Professor Pendemark.
Oops, it sounds like she got cut off. So I'll just say you can send it to karen.penn@montgomerycollege.edu, or please put the feedback in the, if you click the link in the chat, we'd love to hear from you there as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.